All right, we're live. Welcome, everybody. This is the Bitcoin ABC live stream. Why build on Bitcoin Cash? Our guests today, Laura, the Spice Queen, Shama Chancellor of Stamp, and co-hosting with me, Anthony Zegers. I'm George Donley. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, so great to have you guys with us today. So let's jump right into the topic. So Laura, you are one of the founders of Spice Token.
Yep.
Why did you decide to do that on Bitcoin Cash?
Well, because Bitcoin Cash is actually my main focus, my main token. It's what I know about. And so we decided to just basically do the Spice token because it's myself and Spice Toshi. I mean, we're pretty big into Bitcoin Cash, not into Bitcoin, of course, and any of the other ones, Ethereum. We're just a big part of the Bitcoin Cash community. And so it was, an easy decision to do. And SLP tokens came out, and it was quick and easy, and we just did it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember just like a year or so ago, people were pitching me to make tokens on Ethereum and on that other chain, NIM, and they were saying, "Yeah, we'll do it for you for $5,000 all in." Whereas on Bitcoin Cash, what is it costing now?
It didn't even cost us $5,000 to start Spice. I mean, honestly, it was a no-brainer. It was like all we had to do was, find some developers who, thought that the concept was pretty cool. And as soon as we found those developers, boom, it was a done deal.
Yeah, and I think just creating the token, like, so for my BCH Latam project, we created a token called PAN. And I mean, just creating the token cost like 1/10 of a cent in Bitcoin Cash. I mean, like nothing, right?
Right.
Yeah, so easy with Bitcoin Cash.
Microtransactions, the speed, it was just it was such an easy decision. As soon as we decided, as soon as SLP came out is when we decided to do Spice, because in CoinSpice, everybody knows of the combat, when you do the thumbs up and stuff like that, you would get a rep point. Well, so we wanted, to basically give value to that rep point. So that's why we decided to do Bitcoin Cash. So for every rep, every thumbs up, you got, like 100 Spice. And so we started to distribute it that way.
Cool. That's interesting. So, Shay, you're building on Bitcoin Cash. You're building the Stamp Chat project, which is really interesting. It's not just chat, but it's about reversing the burden, really, like on traditional platforms. Well, you tell us what's Stamp all about,
So yeah, Stamp itself is a kind of created as if it's a chat client, and there's other stuff that it will do in the future. Right now it's just for talking to people, but the underlying protocols are fundamentally based around the idea of cryptographically attaching some monetary value to some information that you send to somebody. So you can signal how much that information is worth, and from there's a lot of other interesting use cases that can come out of that. Kind of the main thing that Stamp does is allow you to receive messages and prioritize who you pay attention to based on what kind of value you're exchanging with one another. Not just like the informational value, but it forces you to put an actual like monetary value on how much that communication is worth. And so you don't end up with just an inundated message box with tons of irrelevant messages, or if you do, at least you can sort through them. And that, as an aside, allows you to move away from these moderated platforms where there has to be somebody getting rid of all the spammers, right? Just implicitly, everybody has to pay to send a message. So you don't need to worry about who or who is not part of the system. So it's ideas to create this open messaging platform that everybody can use. It's unmoderated.
Super, super. Yeah, I think Stamp is so interesting in that sense. So what led you to choose Bitcoin Cash, or what advantages do you gain for Stamp by building it on Bitcoin Cash?
So, like I said, Stamp is the core concept is to just be able to cryptographically attach monetary value to some information and then be able to communicate that somewhere else. And it doesn't require a lot of complicated features on chain. And in fact, the protocol, the way that it works, allows you to sort of run your smart contracts and other business logic off chain very easily. So you can have different programs that not everyone in the world needs to run, unlike in Ethereum, and they can communicate back between one another, sending these messages that contain value. And Bitcoin Cash is a very simple, fundamental protocol. It's much easier to scale than something like Ethereum, or some of these other like very heavy cryptocurrencies with various smart contracts functionality built in. And so for Stamp, you end up sending a lot of small transactions. And the goal would be to have a lot of people using it. Just on like testnet, sometimes if people are using the group chat, we can end up producing like 1 megabyte blocks already. And so it's important for me to build on a cryptocurrency that can support that kind of volume in the future. And based on my own background working on it and working with Omri in the past, I understand that can be accomplished on Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash specifically. And so that's why I'm building on Bitcoin Cash rather than some other platform. The ability to scale in the future is very critical to what I got going on.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say it's interesting, like listening to Laura and then Shema, because I've always had this theory that there's my idea is kind of like, it's like a two-pronged strategy. And one thing is make it really, really easy for people to build stuff right now on Bitcoin Cash, like make it simple and easy to get started. And then also have like a path that you can have confidence that in the future it will be, a good platform that can grow and all of that kind of thing, which is sort of what Shay talked about. So it's interesting that both of you kind of mentioned those two aspects, which I think are like important things. If you want to build on Bitcoin Cash, like you want it to be easy to do, and then you want it to have a good future prospect ahead of it.
Welcome also Amaury, says Shay, to the stream. Hello, Amaury.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late.
Hello.
Good to see you. You made
The
it.
Rubik's Cube was particularly difficult this morning. Show us your hands.
I have the simpler Rubik's Cube. It's easier to solve.
So Shay was talking about scaling and how important it is that, he's building on a platform that is thinking about scaling and that is aiming really at scaling, because he's already producing 1 megabyte blocks on testnet, which is where Stamp is running right now. So Lara, how important do you see scaling on Bitcoin Cash to the future of Spice token, or what are your general thoughts on scaling?
I think it's very important for Spice as we are adding more and more users and more chats every single day. Spice is growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, I can look at the metrics and, every day there's 2 or 3 chats that are being added, new users that are being added on a constant basis. So scaling is absolutely important to us. I mean, we already have, 1,000 active users, and then we have about probably another 3,000 inactive users. So, and maybe a little bit more. So we're constantly growing. People are learning, about Bitcoin Cash through Spice. I mean, just last night I had somebody message me saying thank you so much for teaching me about, Bitcoin Cash, and it's just amazing, that we have these kids that are in the Philippines and, and Nigeria and stuff like that are just now learning about cryptocurrency, and they're doing it through, Spice. So, scaling is very important to us, and just having the consistency is really important. So, yeah.
Consistency is a really interesting topic. So what kind of so you mean consistency in terms of the roadmap or the focus or consistent growth or
consistency in all of the above? I mean, we need things that are going to be fast, and especially for these people that are in this, third world countries, in smaller countries that don't have money, we need it cheap, and like I send money to some of the kids in the Philippines, and, they have it within, just a few minutes, and they're able to go right out and do their shopping. I mean, they have some kind of app where they're able to immediately then shift it into, their dollar. So I can send them money and, Bitcoin Cash, and within 10 minutes, they're able to go to the store and do their shopping, and they change it into fiat, but they're able to get the money that I'm sending over here. So, the consistency and the speed, in the microtransactions, it's very helpful.
Cool. That's really interesting.
I have a question about Spice. Like, I know it's a token for tipping mostly, but is there others? Like, I know there's also, like, what does a token allow you to do? Is there other stuff? Like, I know there's a Spice feed, but I'm not that familiar with
so
stuff that is like that it does.
We also have a dice game. So you can go and you can play dice. You can play rock, paper, scissors. I don't know if you're familiar with one of the other founders, Joey. He is actually doing a game, and it's like going to be like a card game called the Sphere, and you'll be able to buy objects in that game with the Spice token. So that's going to be the currency in the game. So that'll be out probably, I think it's in about 2 months, and he's just putting out little blurbs right now about all the features. So, and I'm one of them. Spice Queen.
And the Spice, could you maybe describe the Spice feed, because I'm vaguely familiar with it, but.
Okay, so the Spice feed is basically, you can opt in or opt out of it, depending on how you feel about other people seeing the content that you post in the chats. So basically, every time you receive a tip or every time you actually tip someone, it will show up on the Spice feed. And that's pretty much all Spice feed is. It's just, and then if you're scrolling through the Spice feed and you see something that you like or interest you, you can, click on it and expand it, and you can see which chat it's in and stuff like that. So, but, some chats are more private, so they have it turned off. And you're able to do that.
So basically kind of publicizes like the messages that the people tip or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. So does SpiceFeed also post to any social media like Twitter or anything?
No, it's basically just a website where you can go and look at it. We are having a problem with Twitter because we did have the SpiceBot on Twitter, but when they went through and they banned all of the bots, they banned the BCA, the Tipper bot, they banned SpiceBot, they banned a lot of bots off of Twitter. So, it was a lot easier for us to do it that way, on Twitter, but, they don't really like us, so.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about the state of, so to build on Bitcoin Cash, really you need a vibrant, I think, developer community. What else do you think are the essential ingredients, for somebody who's thinking about coming and building on Bitcoin Cash? What else do you think they might need besides like maybe some mentoring from fellow developers or guidance? Shay, do you have any thoughts on that topic?
I'm trying to express my thought in a positive way. I would say that I think a generous ecosystem, the one that's most welcoming and you get the most value from by participating in. And value can come in a lot of ways. It can come from positive attention. It can come from funding. It can come from Laura giving, money to kids in the Philippines so that they can buy food during the epidemic. I think that ultimately, scaling isn't sufficient, and I think that the main whales in any cryptocurrency. I think that the overall feeling of that ecosystem and all the people that kind of loosely end up working together within it, kind of how they view the world kind of rolls downhill. And I think that just being more generous with newcomers, and less sort of and more focusing on attracting those people rather than like who's already here. There's so much focus within Bitcoin Cash on the sort of the existing players, but they're here, but they're gonna do stuff or not, and a lot of them have a lot of history already showing the kind of work they do. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but having stability and consistency, like Laura said, I guess would be the summary of what I was trying to get at.
Anthony, did you have any thoughts on that? On what, like how do we support builders, or where's a good place for new builders to go to get oriented?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. There's lots of different groups and so on. It depends what you're trying to build. I mean, I just, one thing that Shama said that I kind of makes me think about is, yeah, you basically want a culture where everyone can help each other benefit. You know what I mean? Like there was, I think on our last live stream, Amori made a comment that, we shouldn't, it's good if the people building things can also benefit from what they're building. And then someone wrote an article saying like, oh, Amori wants to profiteer off the protocol or something like that, which is totally not a good way to interpret. Like it's totally like a misinterpretation of what he was trying to say, which is basically like, obviously, like it's good if everyone who's contributing also benefits. Like if you have a system where you're basically relying on people to sacrifice their own interests to like make the thing be successful, then that's not a good strategy. And regardless of whether you're so basically all the people, like the people building stuff, like we want to have an environment where we help them be successful and build their own things successfully. So whether that's what Shay is doing or anything, like there's various people trying to build products and services on top of Bitcoin Cash. So yeah, like in general, like I think like in terms of a protocol or whatever, we should focus on like helping people build other stuff on top of it. And then, maybe we don't know what exactly they're going to do. Like Shay is building Stamp, which I guess is sort of like what people used to say about Bitcoin. Like it's not like the chat is just the first app, but the real product is the protocol or whatever. So like there's a bunch of, that's kind of my take on what you're doing, Shay. I guess I don't know. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not just this chat app. It's more like something that can do. Maybe the protocol can do a bunch of different cool things. But anyway, like there's a bunch of things like that we haven't thought about yet. Or the Spice token. You can build some ecosystem of like around that on top of Bitcoin Cash, and then you can figure out how to do cool stuff that I wouldn't think of or whatever. So yeah, I don't know, like, I don't really have like, I guess I don't have any specific ideas right now, but just in general, like that's kind of what we want to aim for, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important to think about necessary versus sufficient conditions.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that Bitcoin Cash offers from a protocol level. But Bitcoin Cash is just a protocol to transmit value around and record that some value has moved from one place to another. At this point, it's not even that different from some of the other Bitcoin forks. Like Stamp could use any of those relatively easily. So, Stamp is a particular application and it works well with Bitcoin protocol. The question that needs to be asked is, what does Bitcoin Cash offer to applications like Stamp or Spice? Like, why go there? In some cases it's, there are a lot of different options, and maybe Laura likes the people in this space and knows them already, so there's social network effects there, and those are good, but they're not sufficient to bring outside interest and outside developers to come make new stuff. And so people that are investing in Bitcoin Cash sort of need to ask these questions: is where can I find developers outside the space that are working on projects that would benefit from having Bitcoin Cash? And how do I pay them to come build it on the platform that I'm invested in? Because like, if you put yourself in my shoes as somebody that's building something, I'm doing all the angel investment for Stamp myself. If I ultimately get investment later, I'm going to have to do whatever those people want to return profit to them. And the question I'm asking myself is, what will they expect from me? Will they want me to try to build Stamp on Ethereum because that's what they like? Would they, it's not necessarily the best for my product, but sort of whoever ultimately wants to pay to get it built is, like Tron, for example, they bought Steemit. And Tron is making some interesting moves in buying all of these like front-facing web properties. And that's the stuff that Bitcoin Cash investors should really be thinking about, because that's where you get the users. And ultimately, people don't care what protocol the value moves around on. That's not important. So it's like, what does Bitcoin Cash bring to people that we're going to be building stuff? That's the question that people should ask.
Yeah, and that's also good. I think maybe Amori or someone mentioned that on our last live stream, was like the perspective of the VCs and people providing them money. Like, you want to be able to give them confidence too, that like, they're building on a solid foundation. Like, I think the HoneyPay guys mentioned that. Like, if they get investors, you want to be like, okay, there's like stable, like we're building on a stable like infrastructure here that's well funded and stuff like that.
Laura, did you find any particular sources of technical or other support or any particular place that's a good place for new builders, new Bitcoin Cash builders to enter the community at?
Well, the developer that we have, we actually got him from Ethereum. So he came from Ethereum. He was, he worked at an exchange on Ethereum. And he came right over to BCH. He had no problem coming over. So we recruited him from there, actually. He really likes the BCH protocol. He said he finds it very easy, and it's just, he jumped right into it. I mean, probably he was able to start building within a month after we brought him over. So that was very promising.
Cool. So there's a pretty not too steep of a learning curve for people coming to Bitcoin Cash, you would say. Excellent.
Yeah. And, he has a team of 3 other ones, and they all, came over with him. So.
Excellent.
That's
so
good.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, nothing. I just said that's good. That's what we want to have happen. Bring in new people bring people into Bitcoin Cash.
So so several of us have mentioned Ethereum. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the hip and in vogue token platform still. But I've seen you guys comment at different times, Ethereum's smart contract platform, Bitcoin Cash is UTXO. Can anybody expand or elaborate on, what that means? What's the difference? What are the implications?
Yeah, I can do that. So Ethereum is based on an account model, and Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or any derivative of Bitcoin is based on the UTXO model. So what that means is that in the Ethereum system, you have an account that is very similar to a bank account, and that account has an address, and that account has a balance. And so every time you send money to someone, that money is added to the balance. And you can have a bunch of other informations that are attached to that account. On a Bitcoin type system, if you send coins to someone, it creates a new, what we call a UTXO. And each new UTXO is unique as far as the system is concerned, right? So every time you send money to someone, it's effectively as if you created a new bank account for just that payment to the other person. And so that system is much more scalable. And the reason is you don't have to deal with an account where there is a bunch of state attached. And you know, like if I send money to two different persons, then, you know, like that money needs to be subtracted from the same account. So they need to be ordered in a precise manner. It's not clear, you know, like if one is valid, the other one is not valid. It's going to depend on the ordering. There's a bunch of issue around this kind of stuff that makes it more difficult to scale. The flip side of that is that obviously you can attach a bunch of state to the account, and that state can then be used in smart contracts. And so you can do more smart contract kind of stuff with that model. And so Bitcoin Cash is a UTXO model, like any Bitcoin derivative.
To go back to your earlier question about Stamp, George, to kind of going with what Amaury said, that might make a little bit more sense, is that you could think about Stamp and the underlying protocols as a sort of a layer which provides an account system on top of a UTXO-based cryptocurrency. So you have this underlying scalable protocol that's based on UTXOs, and then you have this other layer that provides an account interface, and then you can record all of the value transfers into the UTXO-based cryptocurrency, but all of the state and everything is done on a second layer. And that's basically what I'm doing with Stamp. And just the first application is you could do chat, but you can do all these other kind of smart contract things in an off-chain manner where it doesn't impact the scalability of the actual cryptocurrency, because not every node needs to run through the smart contracts, and not every node needs to keep all of that state. So I don't know if that makes it a little bit more clear.
That's really interesting. So Stamp is actually like a second layer on top of Bitcoin Cash also.
Yeah, you could think of it as like an account-based system built on top of a UTXO-based system.
Cool. Cool. So we have a question from Telegram. And they want to know, this is Nath from Arnu. He wants to know which project currently or in development on BCH is your favorite in respect of creating new adoption. Who wants to answer first? So what's your favorite, which project that's currently happening or forthcoming do you think is most promising for adoption?
I'd say it's a tie between Spice Token and Stamp.
There's Read.Cash is pretty interesting as well. I like it. Read.Cash a lot. I've made a whole $100 off of writing articles there.
I haven't been on there. I think I've made like 5.
I would say personally, Stamp as like the underlying system on top of which it's built is exceedingly interesting, and I can see a lot of like, you know, it's almost cliche, the saying, like, you know, like this chat application is the first application and yada yada yada. But I don't think it's cliche in that case. I think you know, people have been talking about this type of system for Bitcoin for a very long time, and nobody has built them. And I think it's clear that there is a demand for that. And I'm eager to see like everything that can be built on top of that.
Thanks, me too.
I don't know, actually kind of more on a more serious note, like I mean, a more boring answer, I guess, is I'm pretty interested in just like the basic using Bitcoin Cash as like, you know, cash over the internet. Like, so just like good wallets and merchant, like accept, you know, make it easy for merchants to accept and all that kind of stuff, which I still think like there's still a lot of room to improve on that front too. So yeah, like that's kind of good, but yeah, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. So I'm happy with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I would say
I'm thinking spice and stamp is the ultimate combo.
Yeah, I wanted to say we probably have a bit of a wallet problem if we are, you know, if we want to be honest with ourselves. The wallets that we have don't have very good UX. And we are all into crypto, so we kind of like are used to the way it works and can gloss over that. But it has more to do with learned helplessness than how good the wallets are. I'd say most of the wallets that we have are actually pretty bad. We need to do something there.
So what's the wallet that Spice token users seem to favor, Laura?
Probably Badger. No, it's not up to date, but it's pretty easy for them, and it takes SLPs. But you know, now Bitcoin.com, they have SLP in there, so a lot of them have been switching over to that. But it's not so far, it's not really easy to find it. I mean, it's easy because I know how to do it, but you know, explain to people where to go to find their tokens. So you know, it's not so easy that way, especially if you have more, you know, than one address in there. You have to actually search it a little bit. But yeah, Badger is usually the first and easiest one that we suggest.
So do most users, like I know it's on Telegram, is it like do most users just, or is it only, I don't know if it's on other things other than Telegram also.
It's also on WeChat.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
But do lots of users, I would imagine lots of users just keep keep their balances within the Telegram app or whatever. And don't even
it depends on the user. There's some people that as soon as they receive it, they'll run in, you know, to the exchange and, you know, sell it. But for the most part, yeah, most people just keep it on Telegram. You know, you see thousands, you know, 1,000 tip here, 1,000 tip there, you know, back in the beginning, how we were giving out 20,000, 50,000 for a tip, each tip, just spread it around. So it's basically, it's left in the bot on Telegram.
I found, you know, on a funny note, I found one of the best use cases, or maybe the most fun or dramatic, was the pillory function in one of these Telegram groups.
Shama can tell you all about the pillory function.
Oh yeah, I was involved in that war with him.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
So, you know, we actually lowered the requirement for that, and we're actually thinking about doing away with that. It's kind of one of those features. It's a lot of fun for us, you know, because we all have a large amount of spice. But for people that don't have, you know, large amounts of spice, it's not fun for them, and it's actually kind of cruel. You know, so
yeah, we lost that war, so yeah.
Yeah, well, you know,
we might be a little butthurt over that. I'm not sure. It was still hilarious though.
It was very funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, I like the idea of it then goes out to the whole entire group, you know. So, you know, the active participants. I like the fact that, you know, once the pillory goes through, it then gets rained on to everybody.
I was disappointed that Toshi came in and unmuted everyone. I was really curious to know how long after timers went out that it would take for people to start chatting in the room again.
Right.
Because they would have moved somewhere else to talk, and like, unless they set a timer to remind themselves to come back to Spice Chat, you know, it's like.
So just for people,
who don't know what we're talking about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe people don't know what we're talking about, but I guess like my understanding was Shema, you just decided to just pillory everyone who said anything in the chat.
I did. Yeah, I was.
Just
As soon as I
don't know why
learned
you
about
did
the function, somebody pilloried George, and I was like, "You can
Yeah.
pillory people? I've got a lot of spice. Let me see how this works."
Yeah.
So like,
So-
I had like 300,000 spice from like when it first came out. People were tipping me 20,000 at a time, and I like literally pilloried, I think 12 people before I got
was there.
pilloried myself.
Yeah, before they pilloried you. Yeah, and then they gave you an extension for another
I was
week.
banned for a whole week.
Yeah. Wasn't allowed to speak.
So this pillory function, for those who don't know, is basically if there's someone in a Telegram chat, for example. I don't know if it's available on other platforms, but if there's someone in there that you don't like or who's saying things that you don't agree with, and if you have enough spice, you can silence them for X amount of time. The longer the time, the more it costs. Yeah.
And then you can also throw fruit at them or bats at them. You can.
Tomatoes.
Yeah, tomatoes. So, and then that extends their pillory time. And then you can throw a heart at them or something like that, and then that will release them from pillory or shorten their time.
I think these use cases are really interesting to me. There's sort of this like unspoken thing on the internet where like you go on Reddit, right, and an upvote is attached to an account. You get one upvote to move a post up some unknown amount of slots in a ranking, or you go to Google and there's AdWords across the top that people pay for, and then there's supposedly a ranking system of sort of everything that's categorized correctly. But anyone who's looked into this a lot knows there's botnets that run on Reddit that influence all of those results. And there's SEO companies that go and like manipulate Google results. And it's this constant game, but it always comes down to the fact, like, how much money do you want to spend to get your message in a particular location in a ranking so that other people see it, right? And I think cryptocurrency like Bitcoin Cash has the ability to just make it very explicit. Like people, I've seen in this space since I got here, people want to create these Rube Goldberg machines of trying to stop, money ruling the world. But I think what cryptocurrency does, and in particular what Bitcoin Cash has the potential to do, is just make it apparent. It's all driven on money, and we're all just gonna pay to upvote. We're just gonna do it directly like that. We're gonna get rid of all of these like underground games, and like, you don't want somebody to talk, I'm just gonna pay to make it so you can't talk. And it's gonna be real honest. It's gonna be completely straightforward. I'm not gonna pay to have 12 bots come into the room and I'll talk and change the subject. Like, these are the types of things that happen in reality. And if you just make it very direct, then everyone can participate. And it doesn't become this moral game of like, I think it's morally wrong to pay to, vote manipulate Reddit. Like, if it's just, I click, plus $5 to a post I like, it takes out the like segmentation between the people who are willing to pay to manipulate information and then everyone else that actually wants to get good information out.
So another topic that might be of interest to builders that's been bouncing around a bit is Avalanche pre-consensus. For those who don't know, Amorty or Anthony, would you like to tell the audience, in a nutshell, what is Avalanche pre-consensus on Bitcoin Cash?
Do you want me to describe it, Amari, or do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can come up with a good description. I mean, it's basically just a way for a bunch of nodes or whatever, a bunch of computers that are talking to each other online at any given time to agree on something. So it's basically a Byzantine, decentralized way to come to a common decision that you can be confident about. So, I mean, Bitcoin solved that problem or a similar problem by saying, okay, we're going to do proof of work, and over time you can build up confidence in that, you know, everyone agrees on the state of things. So Avalanche is similar to that, but it's different because it's basically, it works for people who are like for things that are all communicating at the same time. Whereas like Nakamoto consensus, I guess you'd call it, works for looking at the history of things. So I think of it as like, you know, Bitcoin or like proof of work is like inscribing your records on a piece of stone or something like that. Whereas like Avalanche is like everyone sitting around talking at the same time and coming to an agreement on how things are. So basically like right now with Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin, you know, you send transactions on the network and everyone can, you know, all the nodes have a mempool and they see what transactions are in the mempool, and you can kind of predict which transactions will be in the next block. But you have no way of really knowing like with any degree of confidence what all the other people see. You just kind of assume that, well, I see it, so other people probably see it also. And if there's some conflicting information, there's no way to figure out which, you know, which of those versions, like say there's two conflicting transactions, you say, well, I saw this one first, so I think that's probably the valid one, but maybe other people saw the other one first. So right now there's not a very good way of reconciling those sorts of things, that you like what you perceive as the state of the world around you. So Avalanche basically is just a way of like all the people who are communicating at that time to come to like have confidence that they all agree on like a state. So it's pretty useful for, like I mentioned, transactions in the mempool. It's pretty useful for coming to agreement with everyone in real time of like, okay, these are the transactions that we consider valid, you know, that will be in the next block. So
Oh, we don't like states.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm probably not describing it perfectly, but I'm kind of trying to give like the layman's view of it, which is probably my view. So
I think it's
basically,
a
like,
good.
oh yeah,
I think-
states. Oh, I get your joke now. Yeah, we don't like the state. That's true. So yeah, so basically, you know, in 1 or 2 seconds or 3 seconds or something on that time scale, you could have it. You could say, okay, like everyone that's on the network that's following this protocol agrees that these are the transactions that we'll consider valid. So, I mean, it could also be used maybe for other things, but especially for like what we call zero conf, basically like having near instant agreement on which transactions are the valid transactions. So from a user's point of view, it just means like if you're sending a payment, then everyone can have confidence, the user and the merchant and everyone else on the network can say, okay, yeah, this is valid and it's good, you know, within like a few seconds. So that's very valuable.
Just one thing too about that. If you're
Sure, I'm basically done.
For Stamp, the way that it operates, you actually pass transactions off to the other person. You don't like broadcast them into the mempool and another person find them. You tell them directly, here's the transaction that I'm paying you, and then they can use that. And those transactions get written into encrypted messages that are then persisted on your relay servers. And it's very important to make sure that those don't roll back. For people building on Bitcoin Cash in the future, there's tons of logic in Bitcoin Cash in order to deal with the possibility that you might receive a transaction and then it become not valid later. In order for Stamp to work right, it has to just sort of assume that everything works with zero conf. Like you end up spending the outputs of transactions you just received, et cetera. But if for some reason the state was to roll back in any way, like the software still needs to be able to keep going. And there needs, you know, if somebody sends you 1 BCH and then you spend some of that and then that rolls back, like, and you need to be able to know who didn't end up paying you after you got a notification that they did pay you. And so zero conf is not just important from a user experience perspective, but from being able to actually build things that work fast and reliably. um, with my own experience, I just don't think that most people trying to build applications that are actually business products would have the ability to deal with rollbacks of transactions and trying to like make sure all of that works. Is very complicated.
So basically it makes it easier, like simpler to build stuff on top because you don't have to deal with thinking about like, oh, what if there's a reorg, or what if like there's a double spend of this?
Yeah, no, that stuff makes it very, very difficult. And I don't even think right now, some applications depend on the 0MQ interface in Bitcoin D, and I don't think that even notifies when stuff's evicted from the mempool. I could be wrong, but I haven't looked too closely into it, but I think there's some messages, right? So you get a notification of transactions there, and it gets dropped from the mempool, and your wallet server, has to do something in order to figure out whether that happened or not. And like the ZMQ interface doesn't have guaranteed delivery. Like there's just a ton of stuff here, and having something like Avalanche, not necessarily Avalanche, but whatever works to make sure that we're not getting transactions rolled back, or we know that they're not valid in the first place, would make wallets significantly easier to write.
Yeah, it's especially difficult because all those decisions, they end up being subjective. So your node might eject something from the mempool or reorg something or whatever. That doesn't mean that other nodes on the network are doing the same. And you may discover later that effectively this transaction went through anyway because there's a chain that you haven't seen right away. So the whole stuff is like, I'd say, like effectively unsolvable in many ways. It's just like bound to have like a bunch of weird edge cases.
So a bottom line benefit of Avalanche is, for example, as Anthony mentioned, instant finality, right? So as soon as the payment's made, if it's legit, it's within a couple seconds, and there's no going back, as Shay was discussing. Also, there is the potential there could be faster deposit times with the exchanges. And so that could enable arbitrage use cases. So Laura, knowing what you know about Avalanche and being, a builder on Bitcoin Cash, highly valued one, what do you see? What are your thoughts on Avalanche? Do you think this is helpful for Spice Token, for other builders? What do you think?
Absolutely, it's helpful. I mean, anything's going to be helpful that's going to, again, make it so. I mean, like you said, you have that instant confirmation, that it's done and it's over with, and there's no going back. So, well, in some instances that's not good because you can't change your mind, but I sometimes change my mind. I'm a woman, it's my but there's no going back. So, but there's also nobody can take it from you. So you say, here it is, I did it, it's done. You have what you need, I have what I need, so we can now go our separate ways. So, that's always, very helpful. Whether, it's going to help Spice, not really, because, that's not, what we do. It's basically Telegram. I send you this, you send me that, thanks. So, but I mean, I think it's good for Bitcoin Cash itself.
Although, for example, as you described, people receiving some Spice and maybe cashing it out with Avalanche, there is the potential that could happen even more quickly than it does now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're pretty quick about doing that. But, there's trading rooms on Telegram where they go in and they're able to, trade their Spice, right there in a bot. So, and there's a lot of trading rooms to where they can do that in an instant. But yeah, Avalanche would be a big help for that.
Cool. So we have, did you want to jump in?
Oh, nothing. I just had a random thought that like with Stamp Chat, I guess conceptually, if you had Spice tokens in the Stamp Chat, you could have you could have the actual like SLP transactions in your within the app or whatever. So,
yeah, so the backend protocols doesn't care about any of that stuff at all. If somebody wanted to build that into a wallet that supports the CashWeb suite of protocols, then they totally could. And it is something that I want to do. We're actually working on a bot framework right now for it, so that people can just write bots that interact with all the stamp wallets. And I think that's pretty exciting to just have these bots that are able to, transmit value with directly. I mean, obviously the simplest one is you just play a dice game right in your wallet with a bot. It's sort of like a D app. That's not that interesting, but from there you have a lot of other options. You got bots talking to other bots, like the stuff that
I find an interesting idea was SLP, and I don't know, like I know that SideShift apparently implemented like doing atomic trades, because with an SLP you could construct one transaction where the BCH go in one person and the SLP go the other way, and then you both have to sign the transaction at the same time. So that's sort of interesting. But I mean, you basically need the wallet to be aware of that, because unless your wallet's aware of that, you don't really get the benefit of doing that. So
that's exactly why the protocol exists, so that wallets can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's a kind of an interesting idea.
So we have a question from the chat from Andre. Is there, for Amaury, is there any work being done on Avalanche? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, there's some work done on Avalanche, especially lately. We effectively have a way to do Avalanche, like building the network manually, right? So there is no peer discovery. So what that means, like you can set up a set of nodes and have the node tell to each other, configure them in such a way that they know that each other can run the Avalanche protocol, and then they can run it amongst themselves. But to deploy that, you need to automate the procedure, like so that node can discover each other automatically on the network. But that's a good step, though. This is something I talked about yesterday. There was this DAA developer meeting, and this is really something important. So I'm gonna maybe talk about it again here. I think that we have a problem in the BCH developer community where there is a lot of games that have been played and there is not that much funding, and this funding is not used very efficiently. Plus, we have a lot of people that like to bring very urgent stuff at the last minute and make a big fuss about them, like possibly making a lot of noise on social media to make sure that there is a mob very angry about it as well. And so if we just look over the past few months, it has happened with the DAA. It has happened with the chain transaction limit. It has happened with a few other things. And some of the stuff are good, some of the stuff are bad, but most of the time, actually, everybody's agreed that those problems needs to be fixed. But this attitude is creating an environment where everything is on fire all the time and no long-term planning can take place. And this is why we see stuff that require a bit more long-term planning, like Avalanche, not happen very quickly. And this is very damageable, right? Because we can see that Avalab is running fundraising right now for their stuff. They already raised 28 million, I think, if I remember properly. And they're doing another, they're doing a token sale right now. So they're going to have way more money than that. And they were able to build Avalanche in about 2 years. And this is something we are way above them in terms of recognition, adoption, penetration, and stuff like that. But we have 2 orders of magnitude less funding, and so we are not able to build that in the 2 years that they do. And so if we continue on that path, I have no idea when it's just gonna build, but what I'm afraid of is that we're not gonna be a major leader in the space by the time that happens, you know. So that's the risk there. I think we have you know, we have that problems on our ends.
Okay, great answer. So we have a question for Shay. Are stamp chats permanently stored on the BCH blockchain?
No, not at all. That's a design decision not to do that. So the way that it actually works is the messages are encrypted and sent somewhat like an email through what we call a relay server, but it's very similar to like an SMTP server. And the stamps are basically sent to a Bitcoin cache address that is the EC point edition of your public key and the hash of that particular encrypted message. So they can't ever be reused with any other message. And those are sent on the BCH blockchain. So the stamps are just very small, normal looking transactions. And then the messages are all done off chain. And in fact, the stamps aren't entirely required. The main thing there is for anti-spam use cases, but you could see a situation where like you still want to use the protocol, but you don't want to include stamps and you want to do all the, you know, bunch of like off-chain messaging. And that would be for the individual wallets to negotiate between themselves. If they want to do like complicated signing processes and things like that, where it has to be interactive. So like a Schnorr signature, for example, you would not want every message passed back and forth in that signing protocol to have an on-chain transaction. And so you could still do that.
Cool. Excellent. So a question for Laura, Spice Queen.
Yes.
Aside from buying and receiving tips, is there a possibility we could also mine Spice?
No. It cannot be mined. It's not like Mist. So that's probably coming with all the Mist hubbub of, you know, everybody wanting to know. There is a fixed amount of Spice, just like there's a fixed amount of BTC and BCH. So you cannot mine more. That's probably coming from, you know, the Mist. You know, we have Mist, which is, I don't know if everybody knows, you know, Mist is the new SLP mineable token. I myself have mined, so you know, I'm in the league now. I'm big time, but you know, everybody is doing Mist, which is also now available on the Spice bot. So that's probably, you know, where that question is coming from. But no, there's a fixed amount.
So are you a Mist Queen yet, or are you on your way to being a Mist Queen?
Well, so I mean, I have a few thousand, maybe a little bit more than a few thousand, but when I started doing the Mist, it was like right in the very beginning when it came out. I mean, like within a few days. So I did a few, and then, you know, for like 3 days, I didn't get any rewards. So I just stopped doing it, and then I went back about probably about 3 days before we started to offer it back into the Spice spot, you know, to see if I could start mining it again. And evidently, from what I understand from the Mist community, is that there's some pretty big whales out there that are mining have the fastest machines and the most machines. So they're, of course, getting all the rewards. So I think it's going to do a mining pool so everybody could get into it. But I went in there and started to do it again, but they changed the code and I just haven't updated mine yet. So, but yeah, anybody can mine the Mist. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I did it pretty easy and fast. So.
Awesome. Yeah, Mist is an interesting new project on BCH. And that leads to the next question for Amaury from Crypto Panda. What does Amaury think about Mist?
Honestly, I don't think much. I don't really get it, to be honest, because so the mining process as as an objective goal for stuff like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Bitcoin Cash, right? Like you use that to generate blocks that are then used to secure the history of the transaction that have been made. For Mist, this is not the case, right? Because for Mist, it's using the BCH blockchain. So the mining of BCH already provide that security for Mist. So that's a bit weird. So as a result, mining is only used to emit new coins. And it's a bit strange, right? Like there is maybe the assumption that if you put a lot of work into creating those coins, then they must be valuable, but it's a bit of a Marx theory of value kind of fallacy. But, you know, it's okay. Like if people want to do that, you know, they can have fun with it. It's fine. Like if some people find value in it, that's how it is.
Yeah. So subjective value theory, if people enjoy that, then that's okay.
If subjective value theory implies that if enough people believe in the Marxist value, that poop polished enough will have some value to somebody.
Yep.
I mean, like within a month, bam, everybody was talking about it. I mean, it was like the coolest rage. I mean, it was fun for me for like the first week. It was like, oh, look at me, look what I can do, you know. And then after that, it was just, you know, okay.
I think that things like Mist are interesting from just a monetary experimentation perspective. Like, could you create a situation where anyone can issue new dollars and still end up with an economic system where the coins are stable? And I think Mist maybe is a potential to do that. I don't know how they end up burning the coins, but one of the things that concerns me about Bitcoin Cash as being a complete ecosystem is that there's ultimately, you know, in the future, not going to be enough circulatory drive in the creation and destruction of coins to kind of keep things going. It needs an external economy to push value into it. And so I think that people should experiment more with different ways of issuing and circulating various monetary tokens until we can find something that really works.
So another question for Laura. How amicable is the relationship between Spice and Hunk?
Actually, we're all pretty good friends. I'm also a Hunk queen. So Hunk whale, however you want to put it. So yeah, I mean, we're all friends because, you know, well, you know, Spice started the SLP, you know, basically got it rolling, but, you know, and then Hunk came aboard, you know, and so they came to us for help, and, you know, we helped, and, you know, then they, you know, they wanted to go and do their own thing. So they have their, you know, they have their own tipping bot, but we also offer Hunk in ours. And so, and Keith is, you know, Keith and I are, you know, we talk. So it's very amicable.
Cool.
Only sports would come back, you know, because Hunk is all about sports betting, and I'm just like, come on.
Question for Shay. What would you like to see on Stamp in the next 1 to 2 years?
Everyone.
That's it. Thinking big. I love it. I love it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't have a different answer than that. I'm trying to build useful stuff that people want to use. I mean, the goal is to be a Bitcoin Cash wallet, add in, you know, provide protocols so that people can do like Schnorr multi-sigs and all these other useful features that you can't do right now in most Bitcoin Cash wallets, and then make the wallet interesting enough that people want to be in it all the time, and then they'll be using Bitcoin Cash as a side effect of using their wallet to talk to people and look at websites and dApps and whatever else.
I think it'd be interesting to see a bot on Stamp that that handles P2P liquidity, you know, because chat bots in general, like on Facebook and whatnot, are coming in, have been coming into vogue recently. And I think it'd be interesting if I could just send a message to, to the bot on Stamp being like, hey, I need to buy, I need to buy 1 BCH. And then it sends me back offers, and I can manage the whole P2P transaction just in Stamp,
Yeah, no, that definitely is doable. And the best thing about it is I can't ban your tipper bot because it's the Stamp itself is uncensorable. The way that it prevents too many messages from going through is just by like making people pay Bitcoin Cash fees.
Like Stamp has servers, right? And you can have more than one server. And then are the messages, I assume the messages are all encrypted on the server, so you can.
Yeah, so you can run your own server. You can tell your wallet to use your server, and you can advertise everybody else that you accept messages at this other server that you run, and then all the messages are encrypted. So the servers that actually relay these around have very limited amounts of meta information. It just knows, like, one, it's only the relay server that you choose to use know who you're talking to, and then two, that's all they know. So that this address sent a message to this other address. It doesn't have enough information to know what the money was transacted on chain or what was said between the two parties.
Yeah, that seems like a good model. Like I remember I was trying out BitMessage. I don't know if you're probably familiar with BitMessage years ago, where even the address was unknown. So basically you'd have to flood the network with messages, and you'd try to decrypt every message. And like only the ones that were for you could decrypt, obviously. So but yeah, I think it seemed kind of non-scalable to me. So and it didn't really work that well.
Yeah, so I mean the attitude that I'm taking in Stamp is to try to leave different problems at different layers.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's super privacy focused and they want onion routing, I'm not building onion routing into Stamp. You can run Tor and you can connect to Stamp through Tor. That's on you. Like, not everyone needs to have the complexity of an onion routing system. And like, I don't want messages to be slow for that. Like I'm not doing anything that I need onion routing for, and people that need it, there's mechanisms for that they can use to connect to Stamp with. Likewise, if you are worried about people having that meta information, well, then you can make a wallet that rotates your address a bunch. And so that you only use an address once ever on the relay server system as well. But yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty good trade-off to me, but this we'll see.
So, question for Laura from Kane. He says he thinks it's really interesting that BCH projects are getting popular with young people in different parts of the world, and wants to know if Spice is still big in Bangladesh.
Well, I have a few Bangladesh people in the chat. I mean, it was never huge. I mean, we have a few, Bangladesh people, but it's basically, all over the place. It just depends who's in the chat. And we had one guy who would make YouTube videos, for Bangladesh people, and it depends. There could be some people in Bangladesh that are using it that I just don't know about, but I have a few in my chat.
Awesome. Yeah, I always like to see developing world adoption of crypto. I think that's really where it's at. So this question for Amaury, also from Kane. He says, if Stamp is being used by everyone, we'll need much bigger than terabyte blocks. What does Amaury think about that?
Well, if Stamp is going to be used by everybody, I think a lot of the message are not going to be paying, because you don't want to be paying to chat with people that have high value information. Like, you don't want to be paying to send a message to your family or your friend. If you like, if you could have it for free. but it's a good thing that you can basically chat or exchange messages with anyone, and you have this natural spam protection that comes into mind. Like if someone wants to spam you, they have to make you rich in the process, which is I mean maybe people will actually want spam at this point. So I think, you know, like by the time you reach like a global adoption of something like Stamp, you're gonna see a lot of like a lot of change in the way it works, right? And this is the same with any single product, right? So first you build the product, you build something, you know, like you build something that is usable. Company called that the MVP, like the minimal viable product. And so you build something that works and that people can use. And so you can start having feedback from, you know, like looking at how people are using it, what they like, what they don't like, what they find complicated to use, what they find easy to use. And usually you learn a lot when you do that. And as you learn, you just like change the product in ways that you know, suit more and more people. And you get your early adopter pissed off in the process, right? Because what is usually good for average people may not be what the early adopter prefers. But this is part of the process of any very successful product. Company like Google and Facebook and Uber and whatever, they are all doing that, right? Like they are looking at what people do with their product and how they are using it, and tweaking up to the point where it's widespread. And so so I predict that with Stamp, there are going to be, like right now, every single message is associated with a transaction, but I think there are going to be smarter way to do that as the application grows. Maybe like some of your contacts, you don't want to do that every time, but maybe even with stranger, you want to do like a bulk of you know, like a bulk, like buy a bulk of message or pay by the volume or whatnot, or a slot of time or whatever, right? Like you're gonna see a bunch of stuff like that come out based on what, I don't know really like how people value their time on the chat app, but you should assume that over time the successful applications are the ones that are gonna align the way you pay for the person attention with the way people value the attention in their mind, right? So maybe they value the time, or maybe they value like the amount of message that they're getting, or maybe they value like whatever, right? Or a combination of that. And you should see the stamp that you send with the message are gonna align with the way people value their attention, right? And so if people value their attention by the minute, for instance, you should see the application evolve in a direction where you're gonna send a stamp so I can talk to you for like, you know, 20 minutes, for instance, or an hour or whatever, right? And so we're gonna see a bunch of stuff change, and we don't really know what it's gonna look like at the end. We like, but it doesn't change the general vision of the product. So it's not a given that that is gonna generate terabyte block. Actually, like if it generates terabyte block, it means that the fee are gonna be high, and so you know, like the whole incentive structure is gonna change, and so that the whole stuff is gonna have to work in a different way. So I'm not too worried about that, but definitely like scaling is important. Right now we are far from what we can do, but at the same time, I think there is a bit of short-sightedness in the community that you know, you can build some kind of gizmo and boom, you have scaling, right? Like you can deploy graphene and boom, you have scaling, or you can deploy like whatever and boom, you have scaling. But that's not how scaling tend to work. And some of those gizmo, you know, can do a lot for scaling in a short amount of time, but the real work is gonna be very, you know, stuff that are very long, right? So one of the things that we know we're gonna run into at some point is the level DB database, right? Because level DB has been made for saving user settings in applications effectively, and we're using it to save the UTXO set and much more. And this is not gonna scale indefinitely. Like this database system has not been built for what we are using it, and we are pushing it in the direction where it doesn't want to go. And And at some point, we're going to have to change that. And you cannot change that very easily. It's going to be something that takes, many months of work from highly skilled engineer that understand database system and all of that very, very well. And we need to be thinking about that work right now. And we need to take the preliminary step right now, because if you wait, like if you wait for the problem to occur, like if you wait for level DB to be a bottleneck, then what are you gonna do? Because we know that this is something that takes several months to be fixed, right? To solve. And so what are you gonna do? Like if you run into it, you're screwed. You're screwed because you are gonna have terrible user experience for several months. And this happened to many companies. Like, I don't know if you guys remember Friendster, or maybe like many people watching that are too young for that. Friendster used to be the biggest social network before MySpace, right? So if you look at the history of social network, there was Friendster, that was huge, and then it was MySpace, and now it is Facebook, right? That is the big dog in that space. This is basically what happened to Friendster. Like Friendster became hugely popular, and they didn't do the groundwork ahead of time for scaling, and they find themselves in a situation where they cannot scale at all, right? And they deliver like many months of terrible user experience to their user until many of them move to MySpace. By the time MySpace became bigger than Friendster, the average load time for a page on Friendster was 30 seconds. And like, this is horrible. This is barely usable at this point, right? But they cannot do anything about it, right? Like they effectively need to replace the engine of the plane while the plane is flying. And this is not something that you can improvise at the last minute when your engine is on fire, right? Like, you cannot do that. If you do that, you're screwed. Your competition is just gonna take over.
You have to plan for success, basically. Yeah. If you don't plan for success, you're planning for failure. Yes, and also, like that means that you can pretty much ignore the gizmos right now, right? Because we are not at a scale where the gizmo are useful, and the gizmo are stuff that we know that we can deploy quickly. We need to be worried about those stuff that takes a very long time. And
yeah, talking about like planning for success, and like also like Omari's earlier comments, like pointing out problems and stuff like that. Like, it reminds me of there was a good Elon Musk interview where he was talking about like building rockets, and he basically said that he spends like 90% of his time thinking of all the ways it can fail, and like just trying to eliminate those possibilities. So like, if you're building a rocket ship, there's like a lot more ways it can fail than it can succeed. You know what I mean? So like, but in order to have success, you need to basically focus on all those things and try to fix those problems. So like, I guess I just want to like point out that it's like, when we're talking about this stuff, it's not like we're like doom and gloom, like, because we are trying to plan for success, and there is lots of, we have lots of strengths too, like, good tech fundamentals. I guess we have good brand recognition. It turns out, it was like a thing that came out the other day. There's good, like, adoption and acceptance of Bitcoin Cash. So we have a lot of strengths, so like, when we're talking about these weaknesses, it's not because we're, doom and gloomers or something, but it's important. Like, we have ambitious goals, and it's like, we're building a rocket ship, and we want to like do like something pretty ambitious, build like global peer-to-peer cash. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to kind of like put that in perspective, so that people don't think that it's like we're just constantly, they're like, why are you guys constantly, or why does Omari keep talking about like these negative things and these problems? It's like, well, we need to fix these problems, but
you're not going to space if you don't fix the problems.
Yeah, exactly. We want to go to space, want to go to the moon or whatever.
Bitcoin
we
Cash
can't exactly ignore them. I mean, you can't ignore the problem.
Yeah. We're pretty good at doing that in the BCH community, and I'd say like, not specifically in the like that would be dishonest actually. The whole crypto space,
but the thing is, like, Elon
is really good at doing that.
Totally. Yeah. So we need to do both. But like, Elon Musk, like, people don't think of him as a pessimistic guy, but I found that interesting to like.
I don't know, when you listen to him in interviews and stuff like that, he comes out as pretty pessimistic often.
Does he? Okay.
Like
Yeah.
if you see his Joe Rogan interview, for instance, like it sounds like, something catastrophic is bound to happen with AI and stuff.
Oh, okay. But I mean, in terms of building his rockets, like he thinks that at least, like he basically says success was not impossible. Like, so he tried anyway, but he thought it was maybe unlikely. But then he just like methodically like eliminated all the ways it could fail, and then increased the chance of success. So I think that's like it's an interesting way to think about it, at least. Like, that's kind of like, you have to stay positive, stay like, okay, we're still trying to achieve this goal, which is difficult. But in the meantime, you kind of have to like think of all the problems and try to solve all the problems. So,
Yep.
Anyway.
Bitcoin Cash has such.
I just don't want people to get discouraged if they hear about all these problems and think like, oh my God,
We have such strong foundations. We're so well prepared. Like, you guys have been doing everything right for years, and it's so close. The fruit of the next steps is just so close. It's just a little out of our reach.
Success is still a possible option, but it's not like it's not guaranteed either, so you have to be in that in-between zone where you're like, okay, like, we have to work hard to make it happen, basically. Or else it won't happen. And like, the more people that work hard to make this happen, the more likely it is to happen.
So final question from the chat. USDT Tether, the stable coin, is now on Bitcoin Cash as an SLP token. Is this good for Bitcoin Cash or bad for Bitcoin Cash? Shay, what do you think?
More use is good. I think the UX of having USDT across 9 different chains is kind of terrible for their users, but it also makes it harder to audit them when there's so much different stuff going on. So I guess it's good. I don't know. It doesn't really make much of difference to Bitcoin Cash. I think it's just sort of something else that is there. I don't personally think it'll get much use because of the like confusion between all the different chains it's on. But
what do you think, Laura?
I've never used it. I've never used Tether in BTC, never used it on BCH. I mean, sure, some people might like it, but I don't think that those are people that actually use crypto as currency. I think it's more of a trading thing. In my perspective anyways, it's like, oh crap, it's crashing. Let me throw it into Tether so I don't lose more money. To me, it's not really something that you would use, as currency. It's more of a trading thing.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we've had a really great show. I think we're close to wrapping up. Does anybody want to get in any final words or comments, questions? All right. Okay. Well, I just want to thank so much to Laura, Spice Queen, for joining us today. And can you let our audience know what's the best place for them to get introduced to Spice Token?
My chat, actually, the official Spice chat. There's a lot of really great kids in there. I'm in there. Columbus is in there. And we tip back and forth. And the kids love to talk about it. So as soon as you get in there, you can ask about it, and they love to go on about it and tell you where you can pick it up. They'll be more than happy to tip you, when you get in there, so you have some to share around.
Is that on Telegram?
Yeah, on the Spice chat. Or you can go, if you're not on Telegram, you can go to spicetoken.org and you can learn about it there.
Super. Shama Chancellor of Stamp Chat, thank you so much to you as well. Real pleasure having you today. And what's the best place for people to get introduced to Stamp?
Probably there's a Telegram group. Getting there is a little difficult at the moment. But if you reach out to me on Telegram, Micro President, or Twitter as micropresident. I can introduce you directly. We're gonna have a website up here shortly, but it's still in the works. The copy is being edited. So
Outstanding.
Do you
Okay.
know what the URL is gonna be yet, or people watch this later?
I'll
We'll announce it
it
later.
can happen in the future. I don't want people to go too early.
Okay. Okay.
Just let us know and we'll add it in the description of the video. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. And thank you so much to my co-hosts, Anthony Zegers and Amaury Séché of Bitcoin ABC. I'm George Donnelly. And let's keep building Bitcoin Cash, guys.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye.